Well, we're about to begin. In case of a loss of cabin pressure, just relax, okay? Thank you. Come on in. Thank you.
The Disney original time travel adventure The Timekeeper, also known as
Le Visionarium,
or Visionarium, represents a pivotal chapter in Walt Disney Imagineering history. Today, I'd like to talk about some of the most interesting facts and history regarding this now-defunct Disney attraction that I've uncovered, including, yes, how the events of September 11th technically played a part in its eventual downfall. From the early 90s to the mid-2000s, the Timekeeper could be found at 3 different Disney parks around the world. The first location to debut a version of the Timekeeper was Disneyland Park in Paris, opening on April 12, 1992 and closing on September 5, 2004, with Buzz Lightyear Laser Blast taking its place. The next debut took place almost exactly a year later at Tokyo Disneyland on April 15, 1993. Tokyo's Visionarium closed on September 1st, 2002, with Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters taking its place. Yes, that is another Buzz Lightyear attraction taking the place of a Timekeeper. And finally, the version that we're going to be spending the most time discussing today, the Timekeeper attraction found at the Magic Kingdom location in Florida, was established on November 21st, 1994, and closed. So the closing date is February 26th, 2006 officially, but we're going to get to that a little bit more later. That spot was later filled by the Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor, which opened on April 2nd, 2007, and as of recording this video, remains open to this day. As a little piece of bonus info that is not really relevant to this video, the attractions that existed in this space before the Timekeeper in the Florida location are America the Beautiful, Magic Carpet Round the World, and American Journeys. So you may be wondering how I came into contact with this topic and decided to talk about it. You may not be, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because it's a pretty quick story. I first came across a recording of this attraction, which I will link in the description, and I will also be using a good deal of clips from this because it is truly a time capsule and a really good recording. I found it on a random IMDb list of movies featuring animatronics because if you're unaware, I have kind of fostered a little bit of a fascination with animatronics, and I also love movies, so perfect little crossover for me personally. I would love to talk a little bit more about how I got into animatronics, so if you would be interested in a video like that where I talk about how I got into animatronics and why I'm fascinated by them, all that jazz, let me know, because sometimes I feel like you don't even realize or fully know some of the reasons why you love something until you are just like off the dome yapping about it. Anyway, I said the story would be short. That was kind of short, I guess. Back to the topic at hand, the Timekeeper. A recording of the Timekeeper was on the IMDb list that I was talking about, which I will also be linking in the description as long as I can find it. And I guess it technically counts as a movie featuring animatronics. I would argue it's a little borderline. It's more of a film supplemented by an animatronic or working in tandem with an animatronic, but let me know in the comments what you think, if that distinction is fair, and if you think it should count as a movie featuring animatronics. Also, please let me know any movies with animatronics that you recommend in the comments. I would love to see them. I ended up jumping into the recording of The Timekeeper with little to no context, which I think is sometimes the best way to approach things, honestly. I'm going to go into a few plot details from The Timekeeper a little bit later into this video, but for now I want to focus on the concept and the technology that was developed in order to bring the concept to life. Disney started dabbling in audio animatronics decades before the Timekeeper was even a concept, but the Timekeeper was the first time that the medium of audio animatronics was mixed with something called Circle Vision 360. Circle Vision 360 is a technique where 9 cameras record simultaneously to produce a film projected onto 9 screens, encircling the standing audience. I will say, even as a relatively technologically inclined person who went to school for film production, I have to admit that concept makes my head spin a little bit. Like, I don't fully understand how it works, and it seems like a very tedious and complicated process. This technology was introduced at Disneyland on opening day, actually, back in 1955, and it started when Walt Disney saw a Cinerama film, which was presented on 3 screens. In typical Walt Disney fashion, he was inspired, but upped the ante, asking the question, why not have the screens go all the way around the room? The name was changed from Circorama to Circle Vision in 1967 due to a threat of copyright infringement by Cinerama. Which, honestly, fair, those names are pretty much identical. Since then, the technology has been used for over a dozen different immersive adventures, including our topic at hand today, the Timekeeper. The Timekeeper is the first Circle Vision 360 process utilized to deliver a cohesive narrative storyline. It is also the first to employ audio animatronics directly within the theater, allowing physical characters to interact seamlessly with the surrounding film, transforming the guest experience from passive observation into active engagement in the room where it happens. This elevation makes stepping into the Timekeeper more resemble a live theater experience rather than a passive movie watching experience. To summarize, the Timekeeper was a creative and inventive blending of several different technologies, and even in my research for this video, I can't say that I've found an attraction that I'd consider comparable. Please correct me in the comments if you can think of any. I would genuinely love to know, and I don't claim to be an expert in any of this. I'm just somebody who finds it really interesting. Before getting into the contents of the Timekeeper, I want to first share a fascinating fact that I gleaned from a quote by Michelle Piccoli, the actor who played Jules Verne, from a 28-minute documentary titled The Making of Le Visionarium, about the production process of Circle Vision 360. Preparing and loading the camera takes a lot of time. It takes a lot longer, and you can't edit with close-ups, medium shots, etc. It's one shot and then you cut. So the work is much slower than with a normal camera, but the acting is the same. I will also be linking a transcript to this documentary in the description. I did not watch the entire documentary, but I did read through the transcript and it was really interesting. There are several facts that I pulled from that are included in this video. The Timekeeper animatronic, at least in the American version, was voiced by none other than the iconic late Robin Williams, who brought his signature off-the-wall improvisational type humor to the project, which undoubtedly played a big role in the attraction's success while it was open. An interesting thing to note is that Robin Williams had a pretty notorious falling out with Disney in the early 90s due to a breach of contract in the marketing of Aladdin. Williams agreed to voice the genie in the film on the condition that his voice and character would not be used to sell merchandise or for aggressive direct marketing. Upon the Aladdin marketing campaign, Robin Williams felt Disney had violated their agreement, leading to him going on the record stating that he would never work with Disney again. During promotion for Mrs. Doubtfire on The Today Show, Robin Williams said, quote, "We had a deal. The one thing I said was that I will do the voice. I'm doing it basically because I want to be part of this animation tradition. One deal is, I just don't want to sell anything, as in Burger King, as in toys, as in stuff. Not only did they use my voice, they took a character I did and overdubbed it to sell stuff. That was the one thing I said. I don't do that. That was the one thing where they crossed the line. They mended fences in 1995, just in time for Robin Williams to reprise his role as the genie in Aladdin 3, which was released in 1996. But considering the timeline of the first location in Paris opening in 1992, and the version in the American park launching in 1994, I had to assume that Robin Williams signed on to the project prior to all of the Aladdin drama, and according to an interview with veteran Imagineer Tim Delaney on the Progress City Radio Hour podcast in 2022, the Timekeeper character was designed with Robin Williams in mind, and he was brought in during the writing and early development process to do the character's English voice. However, his famous feud with Disney over the breach of contract occurred during this process, and the audio heard in the English version would be compiled from test recordings of a run-through reading of the script.
You know, there was a problem with Disney and him and with the Aladdin thing, and he took no credit for that, but then they promoted the movie with his name and he got mad. And, you know, that's all movie studio stuff. I don't care about that. I'll tell you that Robin soundtrack, they recorded, we did some readings on that Mother's Day. Remember, all day we were there with him. And he did some readings of it. And then he got angry with Disney and he goes, I'll look at it, you know what, I won't participate in your attraction, but if you have anything, they recorded all the soundtracks and all the run through on the script reading. And so they just recorded it. And he goes, if you have something in the can, you can use that, but I'm not coming in again to record this. So they had to patch that all together.
Part of me has to wonder if it's possible that Disney didn't end up promoting the Timekeeper as heavily as they wanted to in order to avoid upsetting Robin Williams again. I feel like there's definitely a universe where they merchandise the character in the ride much more than it appears they did. As far as I can tell online, there's really not that much merch for this ride, which, considering very recent events when it launched, I could see why they were maybe hesitant to, print all of the t-shirts and, put any more into this venture, because they could upset Robin Williams, which completely valid of Robin Williams to be so clear. Anyway, little side tangent, but I just thought that was interesting. From Wikipedia, here's a little breakdown of what guests experienced during the pre-show segment of the Timekeeper attraction at the American location. Before the actual show, guests were introduced to the invention of the show, Circumvisual Photo Droid, more frequently referred to as Nine Eye. The 9 eyes she had represented the 9 cameras used in filming the show in the round, thus showing the view from one of her eyes on each of the 9 movie screens. She was the latest development by the Timekeeper, the inventor of the time machine. Guests were invited to be witnesses of the first ever use of the newly invented machine. Guests also watched 9 Eyes training videos, which included a plunge over Niagara Falls, a flight into a barn full of dynamite in Topeka, Kansas, and lastly hitching a ride on a space shuttle. I don't feel the need to get too deep into the contents of the story. You don't need me to recap it. If you want to watch it, it is linked in the description. I really do recommend giving it a watch. I will, however, use part of a quote from Michelle Piccoli, the actor who plays the main character Jules Verne. He says, "The story of this film is the story of Jules Verne, who, as you know, was a writer who traveled into the future, who imagined a lot of things. He comes back to Earth and realizes what he had imagined does exist and work. So he's amazed." So how exactly does 9/11 play into this? The short answer to the question posed in the title of this video is that one of the locations featured in the video component of the presentation featured a panoramic view of New York City, which included the Twin Towers.
And here we are. Wow.
This is it, Julie. The Big Apple. New York, New York. City of 10 million dreams and 1 parking space.
It's fantastic.
The attraction was conceived to take place in present day on the current day that the audience was at the park and in the room. New York City no longer looked how it did in the video recording, therefore the time travel illusion would not only be shattered to the guests, but every audience would be heavily reminded of the very recent tragedy. For that reason, the attraction closed on the day of September 11th, 2001, and Disney immediately went to work to adjust the experience, bringing it back on October of 2003, according to the archives that I found on allears.net, which will be linked in the description. The fix that Disney decided on was to freeze the present-day clock in the year 2000 before the attacks had taken place, which, in my opinion, kind of feels like a band-aid fix at best. The truth is, September 11th attacks seemed to be far from the only reason why the Timekeeper was reworked and eventually closed in the early 2000s. According to Wikipedia, the attraction was placed on a sporadic seasonal schedule months earlier, in April of 2001. It's speculated that the reasons for this may have included, but not been limited to, guests finding it hard to stand for the entirety of the attraction. This Reddit user brought up a good point, stating, "I liked it, but you had to stand for the entire show after standing in the queue, and if you were a child, you're surrounded by adults and can't see half of what's going on." Other reasons that this attraction waned in popularity were speculated to be the lack of familiar Disney characters and the inconspicuous entrance to the building. So basically, if they had just gotten a huge neon The Timekeeper sign and superimposed Jules Verne hanging out with Stitch, maybe there's a chance that some version of this attraction may still exist. Probably not. I do think that there's a little something to what I was saying earlier about the dispute with Robin Williams impacting this. This is all just a theory. A Disney theory. But if Disney is coming off of the heels of a drama with an actor who feels like his likeness was being used too heavily to promote one of their properties, it's reasonable to me to think that they may have been a little bit hesitant to crank up the marketing to 11 when it came to something else that heavily relied on the likeness and personality of said actor. I think the ride was kind of doomed to have temporary appeal regardless, but I do still wonder what a universe would look like where Disney really expanded on the concept and character of the Timekeeper. Could there have been a Timekeeper TV show or a movie? I don't know. Didn't happen, is not going to happen now. I learned a lot of really interesting things from the Progress City Radio Hour podcast with veteran Imagineer Tim Delaney, but one more thing that I'm going to share is his thoughts on Circle Vision 360.
Circle Visions were a novelty, were unique, but after you saw too many of them in World Showcase, they have a limited time. They have a limited shelf life.
Mm-hmm.
So the decision, I think Tony probably pushed it more than anything else. He said, "All right, well, why don't we just take a Circle Vision format and turn it into an attraction?"
According to a Redditor from 4 years ago, quote, "If I'm not mistaken, this ride had a reputation for breaking down a lot, or at least far more than the average ride. I took 5 or 6 vacations to Disney while the ride was there, and I only remember it being available once." Even when the ride was running seasonally, the theater space was still utilized by the Florida park. According to WaltDatedWorld.com, which ended up being a fantastic source for this video by the way, quote, "The handrails were used for a makeshift queue for photos during Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party. As illustrated in this picture, the Timekeeper animatronic remained in plain sight when these events were happening, but he did not move or talk. Also, according to WaltDatedWorld.com, the final show for the Timekeeper was technically on December 31st, 2005, although it wasn't announced as closed for good until February 26th, 2006. In conclusion, I really loved diving deep into this topic and finding random little corners of the internet to hunt and gather facts from, and I'm going to try my best to make sure that the list in the description for all of my sources is comprehensive. If there's anything that I've mentioned in this video that you can't find in the description and want to see, please let me know and I will gladly share it with you. This is the first video that I've scripted in a while, and the first one that I've really hunkered down and worked on in 2026. My plan is to get this finished and released by the end of January, which will hopefully get me started on the schedule that I'd like to keep for the rest of the year, which is at least one video like this per month. I'd love to be doing more, but I'm trying to be realistic with myself and avoid getting burned out. One video a month, I think, is a good start. Thank you so much for watching this video and listening to me yap about the Timekeeper. I don't consider myself that big of a Disney fan, but I have to admit that there is so much fascinating history and information out there about Disney, and even if you don't necessarily love their output or certain things about them as a company, you have to admit that they are really up there, if not the gold standard for creative innovation and immersive storytelling, particularly when it comes to theme parks. Those Imagineers know what the fuck they're doing. I think that was the first time I cursed in this video. Sorry for cursing if you don't like cursing. I've gotten through this whole video without cursing. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this topic, if you have anything you'd like to add, or if you have any suggestions of topics that you'd like to be dove deep into next. All of that is very welcome and encouraged in the comments. Thank you again for watching and listening. I'm Evie Piscini, and I will be back with another video on here next month. If you want more frequent short-form content from me in the meantime, my linktree will be in the description, and you can find me in a few different places. I'd love to connect. Have a great day, thanks again for watching, and if you haven't, go watch the full recording of the Timekeeper, and huge shout out to the person that recorded and uploaded it. The internet is amazing. I don't know where I would be without it. Okay, bye.
Okay, show's over. Get out of here, you little numbskulls. I love you. Thank you for coming today. Get out!